me?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we're going to have a lot of people on the call today or on the webinar, I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone out. That way we don't have any background noise or anything that could be distracting. At the end of the webinar, if there are specific questions, I will end this around 1:55. And if you have questions, I'll unmute everyone at that time, and you can ask your questions that way. So I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone out, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So can somebody pop into the chat and let me know that you can still hear me now that I've muted everyone else? Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Lena. All right. So let's get started, you guys. What we're going to talk about today is, in my opinion, one of the most important things when it comes to achievement, and that is how to master time. And we're going to kind of take a 30,000-foot view look at this, and then we're going to refine it down to some specific practices, strategies, things that you can use so that you can use your time to really achieve what you're out to do. So my request of you all is for the next hour to shut off your cell phones, shut down your email, and just spend this hour of time with me, because if you really take the principles of what I'm going to teach you here today and apply them into 2016, you truly can have a business worth owning and a life worth living. And I think that last piece is so critical because in coaching agents and, as a team leader in my experience, I've seen a lot of agents who, spend a ton of time in their business and they really have great results, yet they don't have a life worth living. And so I want to invite you today to just shut off all the other distractions, put yourself on mute, and just really hear what it is that I'm going to share with you today, because I think if you take this and really apply it, I truly believe there isn't anything that you wouldn't be able to achieve. And to start this off, I want to let you know that I pulled this from about 5 areas, the material that I'm going to cover with you today, and I want to make sure that all of you know where I got this in case you want to do your own research into this. One is just my own experience. Secondly, it's a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes, fantastic book. If you haven't gotten it, get a hold of it. Third is The One Thing, Gary Keller's book, The One Thing. Fourth is a book called The 7 Levels of Communication. That's by Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer is a Keller Williams agent. He actually lives in Atlanta. He's from Kansas City originally, but he wrote The 7 Levels of Communication, and some of the things that the strategies around time that he shares in that book are some of the things that I've incorporated into my own business and are part of what I'm going to share with you here today. And then lastly, it's the RPM, which is the Rapid Planning Method by Tony Robbins. Tony has it's called Time of Your Life. It's where I actually stole the title, was from him. But he has a 1.5-hour audio that you could download in iTunes or on the Google Play Store, and it's fabulous. It's like $4.99, and he has a lot of great information in that audio. So for those of you who want to do further research on where this came from, those are the 5 areas that I pulled all this information from. So what we're going to be covering today is first developing the mindset around time. Second, the questions that great leaders ask and how they find the answers. So we'll cover that. Fourth, we're going to cover the time management secrets of billionaires. And then lastly, the rituals for building and following a powerful schedule. So to start this off, I'd like to pose a question to you. If you absolutely mastered the art of time, what would that give to you? So if you had mastered this concept of following a schedule, mastering your time, what would that give to you? And I'd like for you to take a minute and just kind of write out the answer to that. If you nailed this area of time that stresses so many people out, what would that do for you in your life? Now, here's the thing. As business owners, one of the things that we're tasked with is, I think oftentimes people go into what things are, not what they do. So for example, this is kind of an age-old example, but it really works. If somebody goes into a hardware store and they buy a drill, is it that they really want a drill, or do they want a hole? And the reason I bring that up is when we're talking about mastering the art of time and what that can really do for you, then I think sometimes people give these surface level answers and they talk about what it is, not what it does for you. And the bottom line is that everyone is kind of seeking the same thing. We all want the same thing, and that's freedom. And we talk a lot about what freedom is, but we don't necessarily talk about what it does. And my question to you is, if you mastered time and you mastered, achievement so that you had freedom, what would you do with that freedom? And how would that make you feel? Because here's the truth. It doesn't matter whether or not you want a Ferrari or you want to put your kids through school. Everything you do is for an emotion. Everything. And the key to this, the part of mastering time that really plays into this, is that if you master your time, then you can follow through on the activities that you need to do to achieve whatever emotions you're after. And I think that it's important for you to understand what's really driving you. So if you really broke out that question and you said to yourself, if I was 100% free, what would I be doing? Another way to look at that is to ask yourself, or fill in the blank on this question. If I were living my ideal life, what would I be doing? Or if I were living my ideal life, I would be doing blank. Now, you might be thinking, what does that have to do with following my schedule? And here's the thing. You can't plan your day, your week, your month, or your year until you plan your life. So if you know what you want, then you can use your time to get it. And I think that when we look at achievement, you guys, achievement really boils down into two things. Success is really boiling down into two things. And I believe that it is 10% mechanics and 90% mindset. Now, mechanics are knowing what to do and how to do it. That's mechanics. Now, mindset is actually doing what you know. For example, how many people in Keller Williams can honestly say they don't know how to lead generate? I mean, you attend Ignite, you have a foundation for going out and lead generating, and there are so many people who just don't do what they know because they don't have the mindset for it. And so the reason I go into all of this is because we need for you to develop the mindset for time. And oftentimes when we look at achieving something, we go into looking at only the mechanics. So for example, if you take, losing weight or getting physically fit, and you look at the mechanics side, and let's just use America as an example. How many diets and workout plans and gyms, how many of those things are in each city or really at our fingertips anytime we want? And if it were simply a mechanics issue where, people are just simply missing resources in order to achieve something, then we would have the fittest planet or fittest population on the face of the planet. We have every single resource you would ever need to lose weight. And we're one of the most obese countries in the world. Now, why is that? It's because we don't have the mindset for it. And whenever you're achieving or not achieving something, it really boils down to two questions. Is it a mechanics issue or is it a mindset issue? And when it comes to time, I think that we have to really look at the mindset piece of that, because oftentimes when somebody isn't following through on their schedule or isn't properly using their time, they go right to mechanics and they say, you know what, if I had this planner or that app or I had an assistant, then I could use my time effectively. And see, that may be true. You may need a new planner. You may need an assistant. Yet, is it a mindset issue or is it a mechanics issue? Because 90% of the time it's going to be a mindset issue. So do you have the mindset to master time? Do you understand that it is the most precious commodity we have? Somebody's at the end of their life because they've been battling cancer. What is it that they want? Just more time. And when we boil it down to, you can't plan your life or plan your day until you plan your life, what we all want is freedom. And the question again is, what would you use that freedom to do? If you had or were living your ideal life, you would be doing what? And that question is so important, because if you don't have an end game, if you don't have a target, if you don't know what you're really moving towards, then you can go out and you could make this really big mistake. And the mistake is mistaking movement for achievement. Have you ever done that where, you run all day long and you feel like you get all these things done, yet you look around and you're like, what did I really even achieve today? And I look at it as, playing Legos with my daughter. She's got these, they're called Duplo blocks, and they're like big Legos, and she just loves them, so we have them all over our house. And I'm constantly picking them up. And it's funny because if I'm just sitting there playing blocks with her and we're just like stacking, the blocks on top of each other, we end up with like this weird looking structure that has no purpose at all. And it's funny because, if you're just sitting there screwing around, plugging blocks together, it's fun, yet what's the outcome? It's something you don't even recognize. Whereas if you take out the booklet that came with the Duplo blocks and you follow the plan, you can build, in her case, one of them is an ice cream stand. But see, you have to have the plan to properly use the Legos to build the ice cream stand. And so that's why I keep pounding on this idea of, if you had your ideal life, what would you be doing? Because once you know that, then we can really get into mastering your time. So if mastering time is really boiling down to a mindset issue, then I think that there are a couple of bold laws that we could look into around this mindset with time. And one of them is what you focus on expands. And the other is change your thinking, change your world. Now, the thing is that I hear this all the time. You read the MREA and it says, think big, act bold, aim high. And, you hear all this, if in order to create the life you want, or if you really want to model someone who's achieving the results that you want, you have to figure out how they think. But have you ever asked yourself the question, what is thinking? Have you ever thought about that? Like, what is the process of thinking? And have you ever thought about what really controls focus? See, when I started looking into this, was last year at Coach's Skills, it was this year, last summer at Coach's Skills Camp. And I kept hearing Diana talking about this need for us to think bigger. Especially as MAPS coaches, we need to think bigger and expect more out of our clients. And I just kept looking at that, and I'm like, well, how do I do that? Like, how do I think bigger? And so finally, I figured out what my definition, what works for me in the process of thinking. It's simply asking yourself questions and answering them. And then whatever the answers are to those questions, that's what you're focusing on. So focus is controlled by the questions that you ask yourself. And thinking is simply the process of asking yourself questions and answering it. The challenge with most people is that their thinking is so habitual that they don't even notice the questions they ask themselves anymore. It's so unconscious that they just move throughout their life almost on autopilot. And so when we're looking at teaching ourselves how to think and teaching ourselves how to focus, I think it's important to really understand how your brain works. And there is a fabulous book that I just happened to come upon. It's called Afformations, not Affirmations, Afformations. And it's by a guy named Noah St. John. And in that book, he talks about how your brain really works. And what he discovered was that your mind has what you might call an automatic search function, which means that when you ask yourself a question, your mind automatically begins to search for an answer. So if I ask you the question, why did you wear that shirt today? Then your brain starts automatically giving you the answers because it was the one that was clean, because that's the one I ironed last night. So think of your brain as if you have this Google search in your brain, and any question you ask it, it will automatically give you the answer to. And remember what I said earlier about what the process of thinking really is? Asking yourself and answering questions. And if you take control of the questions that you're asking yourself, you'll take control of the answers that you get, and you'll take control of your focus. Now, one of the things that I told you we would cover today are the answers, or the three questions that all great leaders know. And remember, your brain will automatically find the answers to these. So when it comes to time, when we look at a goal, for example, most people go right into, what do I need to do? And that's kind of the daily question that a lot of people ask themselves, is when they wake up in the morning, what do I need to do today in order to move my business forward? Or what do I have to do today before I can just come home? And the thing about that is, if you're relating it to this, automatic searching function in your brain, it will continue to give you the answers to the point where you feel completely overwhelmed and stressed out and frustrated. Here's the thing, in real estate, you will never run out of things to do. So if you're asking yourself that question, it is a never-ending list. And that's where I see people who get stressed out, frustrated, overwhelmed, and burnt out. Now, the better questions that I would rather you start to ask yourself is, first off, what do I want? And I think it's important to ask yourself this in every area of your life. There are 7 areas of your life you have to really focus on. The first one is your physical health. Second, emotions, because the quality of your life is the quality of the emotions you consistently experience. So how you feel is your life. You can have $1 billion in the bank, but if you're stressed out and frustrated all the time, is that really a life worth living? How much are you enjoying it? The third one is your relationships. Here's the thing about relationships. The first one is how you relate to yourself, because as a coach, I have seen this over and over and over. The strongest need in the human experience is to remain consistent with how we define ourselves. And if you define yourself as anything other than awesome, you will never consistently behave in a way that is inconsistent with how you define yourself. This is where you see people who go out and just kill it for a month, and then it all falls apart. So that relationship with yourself is so important. And then you move into the relationship with your spouse and your children. And here's the truth about relationships with your spouse. If you're not happy in your marriage, you're not happy. Now, the next one is time. That's the fourth area of your life. After that, we have finances, that financial sense of freedom. Ben Kinney says, I get my sense of confidence from my reserve. After that is your mission, your career, whatever it is you want to call it. Some people call it a job. And then at the very top is how you're going to contribute. Give back. Now, I think it's important for you to ask yourself a question. What do I really want? What do I want in terms of my health? What do I want in terms of emotions, like how I feel day to day? What do I want in my relationship with myself, with my family, with my spouse, with my dog? When I interviewed Gary Keller, one of the most resounding things he told me that I'll never forget is I asked him, Gary, how do you define success? And he said, success is simple. Success is knowing what you want and getting it. That's success. He said the inherent challenge with that is with most people, they don't know what they want. If you were to go up and just interview 10 random people off the street and ask them what they really wanted, what success means to them, they can't tell you, or the answer is so general, they may be achieving it, but they don't know it. He said the difference between me and other people is that I'm very clear about what success means to me in each area of my life, and I have it written down. He said, I even have success with my dog written down. I'm very clear about what success means to me in terms of my business. So when we're looking at these three questions that all leaders ask and know the answer to, is first you have to know what you want. And think about what your day would look like if you asked yourself, what do I really want out of today? Instead of, what do I have to do today? When you ask the question of what do I want from today, where's your focus? Where's your energy? Now, if we're taking this, and I just want to use these three questions in context of your business, okay? We can talk about, all those other areas of your life, but I want to just talk about your business. So if we're looking at 2016 and you ask yourself, what do I want? You may come up with a dollar figure. You may come up with a volume or transaction amount. Whatever it is, it's right for you because it's your goal. And see, what happens is most of the time when you set a goal like that, like if you said, I want to sell 100 homes, what most people then do is they ask themselves the question, well, how do I get it? And I think that that's out of order. The second question you need to ask yourself is, why do I want it? What is it that I'm going to get by achieving that or following through on that goal? Reasons come first, results come second. And that's where you have to really get tapped into the purpose. What is it that you will receive from hitting that goal? Because think of it like fuel. If, I saw TJ was on the call. If I come up to Seattle and I ask TJ to drive me from Seattle to New York, and I give him the map and I say, here you go, TJ, this is how to get there. But then we only put in enough gas in the tank to get from Seattle to Idaho, we're not going to make it to New York. So you can have the right strategy, the right, map, the right things to do, yet if you don't have the fuel in the tank, if you don't have the purpose burning in you, then odds are you won't get up and follow through on the things that you have to do. And people get really excited when they set plans, and the thing is that if you tap into why you want it, then you start to buy into this idea of success is a process, it's not an event. It's the things that you do daily. John Maxwell says that your success will be determined by your daily calendar. And I think that where people struggle is they haven't really tapped into why they want their goals. So when the going gets tough or they get a little tired, it's just like a car running out of gas. You got to have that emotional fuel, and you have to fill yourself back up. And the way to do that is to know the reasons why you're doing this in the first place. And I think that, when you really master this idea of time, there are two skills that you're going to really come up with. And one of them is you having the ability to take visions and ideas out of your head and making them real. I call that from taking them from root to fruit. And the second thing is that you'll have a joy-filled life. If you do this properly and you ask those questions of what do I want, you ask it over and over and over and over, and you really get into, why you want it, then you'll whistle while you work. You'll be doing work that matters to you and that you're passionate about. And when you're passionate about something, you're not tired. You're not burnt out. You're not frustrated. And when those inevitable challenges come up, you push right through them instead of letting them knock you down and coming up with excuses about, oh, well, my kid was sick this week, or my car broke down, or I had this, or I have that. Life is going to happen, but you have to succeed in spite of that. And if you are tuned into why you're doing what you're doing, that fuel, it's like rocket fuel in you. It's burning so hot that it doesn't matter what gets in your way. That's what they talk about when one commits oneself, that providence moves to. That's because of that burning desire. And I don't believe most people are tapped into that enough. That's why they set goals this time of year. They get really excited about them, and then they're done by the first month into the year, because it's tougher than what they thought, and they haven't really cued into what's the why, what's the fuel. And then you have to understand that that is a daily ritual to get yourself up and to refuel, to remember why. That's why we have things like vision boards. And why Gary talks about in the MREA this idea of an energy plan. For example, I have this agent in my office here today, and I'm still a team leader until the end of the year. And I have a lot of respect for this agent because she came into the business in October of 2014. In her first 12 months, she sold 44 homes. And there's no asterisk next to that achievement because she's not from here. She doesn't have like a father who's a builder. She didn't just walk into a bank that unloaded 100 listings on her. She came in and she grinded that out. And what's interesting is the first 7 months from October to May, because she was in a contract, she was teaching full time. So she was working full time as a teacher, and still sold 44 units her first year without knowing anyone from the city. She's not from here. She's from Colorado. And when she came in, we were laying out her 2016 business goals, and we were talking about this idea of knowing why she really wanted it. And she said, you know what, Jordan, in 2016, I want to figure out how I can take more time off. I'd like to take, 2 or 3 weeks off at a time. And I looked at her and I said, you know what, you're probably not going to be able to do that this year. This year is going to be about momentum, and you're probably going to work a lot this year. But here's the thing. You do that this year, next year, you break through momentum, you get into stability, you live like no one else, so eventually you can live like no one else. And I said the thing is that what you're going to have to really focus on to move through 2016 and hit this goal is you've got to take care of your physical health. You've got to get really clear about your energy, because that's the fuel in the tank. And if you don't, you'll get burnt out, overwhelmed, stressed out, and you'll quit. And I don't think that's something that we as MAPS coaches talk about enough, is how's your energy? How are you taking care of yourself? Are you running your business in a sustainable way, or are you trading your business for your health? Because if you don't take care of your health, how much are you going to enjoy the money? Now, I bring all that up because I really want to stress the importance of knowing why you want what you want. And don't, like I said earlier, don't just focus on what it is. Focus on what it does. What would freedom feel like if you were 100% free today? You had all the time, energy, money that you ever wanted. How would you feel? And see, here's a bold law: be, do, have. A lot of people work that backwards, and they said, well, once I have that, then I can do that, and then I'll be that way. So you got to be, it's the opposite of that. You need to experience that now, because that sets things into motion. It gives you the energy to get up and follow through every day on the process. So get crystal clear about why you want it. And then lastly, the last question is, now how do I get it? And here's the thing about the how. If the why is big enough, the how shows up. It's just the way it works. So those are the 3 questions that all leaders ask and know the answer to. And I invite you, when it relates to time, to stop asking what you have to do and start asking, what do I really want? And use joy as your GPS. Are you whistling while you work? And I know that we're all going to have challenges and we're going to have days that are tough, but overall, how are you emotionally? Are you enjoying this? And if you're not, then think about your emotions as if they're like the gauges in a car. If you're experiencing a consistent bad emotion, then it's trying to tell you something. And odds are you need to do some course correction and really dig into that and figure out what's going on. But these 3 questions can absolutely set you free. And like I said, when you really nail this, you'll pick up that skill set of how to take your visions and ideas and turn them into real things. And think of how cool that would be if you had that skill set nailed. Whenever you had a vision for something that was really important to you, you had the ability to make it real. Would you have a lot of joy in your life if that were the case? So I invite you to write those questions down and start asking yourself. I mean, this is such a great week to ask yourself, what do I really want out of this week? For some of you, it's to connect with your family or to have a great Christmas for your kids, or maybe you're traveling or whatever it is, but just get into that mindset of, what do I really want? Not what do I have to do? Because like I said, that what do you have to do is never ending. It's a never-ending task list. Now, the next thing is, I told you we would get into some specific strategies around building a calendar. And this comes directly from the Ultimate Sales Machine. So they're the 7-time habits of billionaires. Now, the first thing is creating impact areas in your business. An impact area is something, any area in your business that affects the bottom line. So lead generation is an impact area. Lead conversion is an impact area. Finances is an impact area. Customer service. Write down what some other impact areas you think might exist in your business, using the examples I just shared with you. Here's the thing, is that in order for your business to get better over time, you have to spend a little bit of time working on it and not in it. And what I recommend is that you spend at least 1 hour a week, one time-blocked, scheduled hour a week, where you pick a specific impact area and you improve upon it. So if you looked at open houses, for example, and if you do open houses, oftentimes we get complacent in open houses and we say, okay, this is the way I do open houses. I've had results doing it, so we're just going to keep doing it this way. And you may be doing open houses the same way today as you were 5 years ago. And I don't know if you subscribe to Success Magazine, but I think you should. It's awesome. The last month's subscription, or issue, I should say, had a woman in it named Sara Blakely. And Sara Blakely is the inventor of Spanx, which is like undergarments for women, and she's a billionaire. And when they asked her about this process of how she improves her business, and first she kind of sections it out, like what we just talked about, where you have impact areas, so you know what areas in your business are affecting the bottom line and which ones are most important. And she asked herself the question, if I didn't already know how to do this, how would I do it? So if you were looking in the area of lead generation as an impact area that you were going to work on instead of in for an hour 1 week, and you specified open houses, and you took a look at how do you do open houses and asked yourself the question, if I didn't already know how to do this, how would I do it? To get some new, innovative, and fresh ideas, because oftentimes we do things because we were taught by someone else, and we don't innovate on our businesses often enough. And when you break them out into impact areas and you think, okay, now I've got, let's say, 5 impact areas that are affecting the bottom line, which of these 5 is the most important right now? And most people go straight to lead generation. Here's the thing. You may not have a leads issue. You might have a lead conversion issue. You may be generating the roof off of your market, and you don't have a really solid lead conversion plan. So rather than continuing to focus on lead generation, you should take that impact area time or that hour to work on instead of in your business and really improve upon your lead conversion process. My guess is that you probably need to really improve on tracking, because here's the thing. Whatever you track improves. Like 3 months ago, I lost like 20 pounds. And I had people asking me all the time, how did you do that? How did you do that? Simple. I tracked every single thing I ate. Everything that went into my mouth, I marked it down in MyFitPal. Everything. And when the awareness of the decisions I was making about the foods I was eating came to light, it's like, holy cow, I snack on way too much junk food. And the only way that I got to the point where I was aware of it was I started tracking it. So if you're looking in these impact areas and you're asking yourself, how do I improve upon this? Maybe a way to look at that is, well, what do I need to track inside of that impact area that could really increase results? Now, that's the first step to the time habits of billionaires. The second one is touch it once. How many times have you ever been sitting in front of your computer and you see an email come in and you open it up, you read through it, and then you say, you know what, I don't really have time to mess with that. I'll come back to it. And then you either forget about it, and whoever sent it is disappointed, or you have to come back to it, reread the email again, and complete whatever task comes from that email. Here's the thing. If you're sitting there and you see an email, I only want you to touch it once. So that means if you open the email, whatever's in there, you're going to deal with it right then. If you don't think you have time to deal with it right then, don't touch it. If you screw around with email and you're touching things multiple times per day, and you're wasting just 15 minutes a day doing that, that's 97 hours a year. 97 hours a year. That's over 2 weeks of a 40-hour work week that you're spending just on email. Touch it once. Now, the second thing is third is make lists. So how do you make lists of what needs to be done in your business? Do you do a brain dump where you just take everything out of your brain and lay it out on a piece of paper? I like Google Docs because you can share it amongst team members. It's updated in real time. But whatever your system is you got to make a list for your business. You got to get everything out of your head and down on paper. I think a lot of the reasons that people come out of time blocks to do things is because they're afraid if they don't do it right then, that it'll never get done. And the reason is they don't have a way to capture that, to pull it out of their head and get it down onto a list. Now, when you have lists of, let's say you have 25 things that you need to do, and what I got from the 7 levels of communication is this idea of what's called a pre-leave ritual. And really what that boils down to is planning tomorrow today. And what I do that has helped me immensely is I look at the list. My pre-leave ritual starts with, I'm just going to brain dump. I'm going to take everything out of my brain and dump it down on a piece of paper. or into Google Docs. And then I look at what's the top 20% of this. So if there's 25 things, what's the most important thing? What's the second most? Third, fourth, fifth? And so I get those 5 or 6 most important things that I need to do. Now, lead generation is always one of them. And I prioritize those things. So if I've identified the top 20%, which is really going into step 4 here, which is planning how much time you'll allocate to each one. But if you look at each task and you ask yourself, how much time will it take me to complete this? So for lead generation, you might do 2 hours a day. So you write that beside that task. Another one might be, I have a listing presentation that I need to prepare for and go on. So with preparation, driving, listing presentation, how much time is that going to take you? Now keep in mind, we're doing this for tomorrow. We're not doing it in the morning. We do it before we shut down the day. And so beside each of those 6 tasks, we list out how much time is it really going to take us. Now let's say you add all that up and it's 6 hours. Well then, starting with the most important item, you take those blocks of time and you put them onto your calendar. And so when you go into the office the next day, your whole day is already planned. Now here's the thing, is that you need to plan for chaos. Because chaos shows up and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's why we get paid so much, is because entrepreneurs solve problems. Chaos is simply a problem that we can solve. And if you have chaos time blocked, then you can tell it where to go so you can stay into your lead generation time block, for example. So I recommend 2 hours a day of pre-planned time blocked chaos. And I like 1 in the morning, right after you're done lead generating, and 1 in the afternoon. Usually right before you call it a night. My chaos time is right before I go into my pre-leave ritual. That's when I answer emails and return phone calls and put out fires and do all the things that have come up that day. The chaos is my reaction time. Now, you have a pre-planned schedule. And the last thing that I want you to do before you leave is I want you to make lead generation very convenient. And what I mean by that is oftentimes people go into their lead generation time block, maybe they have it on their schedule, and they're there. They show up and they're ready to lead generate, but they don't have any of the prep work done. So they don't know who they're going to call or what they're going to say. And so they get overwhelmed, and then they say, hey, you know what? It's probably more comfortable to work on this inspection repair request than lead generate. I'll just catch up tomorrow. So make your top priorities really convenient. So before you leave for today, in that pre-leave ritual, I want you to write down who you're going to call. If you're calling your SOI, who are those people? What are their phone numbers? And what are you going to say? Now, at first glance, it might feel like I'm giving you more work. Just try this for a week, and then tell me if that's how it feels. But you get this to the point where lead generation is very convenient. How would your day go if you woke up in the morning and you knew when chaos was going to be taken care of, you knew exactly when you were going to start lead generating, and you knew exactly who you were going to call and what you were going to say, and you did that 5 days a week? What would happen to your business? Now, think about it in terms of freedom. How much freedom would you have if you did that for a year? How many options would you have? See, that's what we're talking about when we're discussing this idea of how it's a process, not an event. Success and failure are little bitty decisions. They're mosaics. It's like, have you ever seen a mosaic where it's a picture that's made up of thousands of other pictures? That's the way your life is. It's a mosaic of 1,000 little decisions. And we like to blame events like they're the reasons that we succeeded or failed, but really it was all those little bitty decisions you made along the way. And the decision to prepare to make lead generation convenient for you, for most of you, if you walked in every day and absolutely knew who you were going to call, what you were going to say, and when you were going to do it, and knew in your heart that you know when chaos is going to be taken care of, you would crush this business. And it's like what Tony DeCello told me one time. He said, Jordan, when you nail this business, when you fully understand that it's not about selling real estate, that it's about following a schedule, it's like printing money in your basement. And he's right. Now, to switch gears a little bit here, last thing, I'm sorry. I kind of got off track there on the time habits of billionaires. I talked about prioritizing where you're doing the most important thing first. And then lastly, ask yourself this, will it hurt me to throw this away? We get so much stuff, magazines and emails and classes that we go to. I think that we need to go on an information diet because we have so much coming at us all the time that it's really easy to get overwhelmed in today's world. So ask yourself the question, and here's the thing. I don't know what the actual statistic is, but it's like 80% of stored information is never gone back and looked at again. So ask yourself, will it hurt me to throw this away? So to shift gears, and we talked a little bit about this impact area, what Gary says from the one thing is ask a great question. And remember what we said about thinking big and thinking specific? The process of thinking is simply asking questions and answering them. So being very strategic about what questions you're asking, like what do I want out of this year versus what do I have to do? And then once you ask that question, you find a great answer and you can research and role model. So whenever I wanted to achieve something, for example, when I was a brand new agent, and I lived in Kansas City and I didn't know a soul. And I don't have much of a personality. I'm pretty introverted. In fact, my agents in my office know me so well that one of them came in today and gave me a book called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And so when I first got into real estate, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any money, and I went out and door knocked. And I had some results doing that. Door knocking is really tough, though. And I door knocked like 3,000 houses, and then I started seeing this guy on KW Connect named Chris Heller. And he was just really, awesome at expireds. And I thought, man, expireds, that seems so much easier than door knocking. So I went to Mega Camp, even though I didn't have the money, and I actually ran into Chris. I ran into him at a bar called Pete's. It's a piano bar on 6th Street. And I walked up to him and I said, Chris, my name's Jordan Freed. I've been calling expireds and I'm terrible at it. And I'm wondering if I can just have 15 minutes of your time so you can tell me what to say. And keep in mind, this was before Bold was around and we had all the scripts and dialogues and all that stuff that's, given throughout the company. And he said sure and gave me his card. So I started calling him and eventually I caught him. And he allowed me to record the conversation. And I just went boom, 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 right through the objections I was hearing. And he told me what to say. And then this girl in my office, I said, hey, if you'll transcribe this, I'll give you a copy of it. So she did. And so now I have these scripts from a guy who's selling hundreds of homes a year. And lo and behold, I started using that stuff and really just, using the words that worked. And I started getting appointments, so many appointments that I remember I took 12 listings in 1 month, 1 year, and I didn't even have the money for the signs. I eventually got to the point where I was taking listing people in my office who were much more established, and I'd say, I'll give you the listing. You have to pay me 25% referral fee, but I get to listen to you make your listing presentation. Now, the reason I say all that is because I found a role model. When it comes to achieving something, when we know what we want, why we want it, part of the how to get it is to look for people who have already achieved it and go interview them. It's the cliff notes. You can get right into the meat and potatoes. So find people who are already achieving what you want and role model them. That's what Gary's talking about here with the research and role model. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's really important to condense time by finding people who are already achieving what it is that you want. Now, the bold law is not about it's not about selling real estate, it's about following your schedule. And if that's If it's that simple, why don't agents set and follow their schedule? What keeps us from following our schedule? And I think it boils down to a couple of things. One is we're committed to comfort, not courage. It's more comfortable to step out of our lead generation time block and handle things that we perceive as urgent. And that's how we justify it. It's a lie we tell ourselves. It's a rationalization. And the reason is that we are wired to seek comfort. And we can blame all the transactions and all those things that are going on, but here's the thing. All the agents like Tim Heil, Ben Kinney, Brian Gubernick that are achieving massive things in this industry, do you think it's just because they have less problems than everyone else? I don't think that's the case. I think it's that they are dead focused on what matters most, and they don't allow anything to pull them out of what's most important to their business. And as it relates to you, when you're sitting there in the moment and you feel that urge to step out of your lead generation time block and deal with something that's less important but is perceived as urgent, I want you to ask yourself the question, am I committed to comfort or am I committed to courage? And that has saved me so many times. Not every time. It's not perfect. It has saved me enough, though, where I've made the decision to stay in my lead generation time block more times than I've decided to go out of it. And just like your goals are a process, not an event, so is change. And I think change, especially when it relates to how you use your time, it goes through 3 stages. First, it's unbearable, then it's uncomfortable, then you're unstoppable. How unstoppable would you be if you were in your lead generation time block every single day? You would move straight through momentum right into stabilization where you could build a team and start leveraging the things that you don't want to do anymore. What if you had the ability to give away literally all the things in your business you hate doing? Well, here's the thing, is that all resides on your ability to stick inside of your time block, to say no to comfort and stay in courage. Now, the other thing that I believe, the reason that people get out of their time block is this idea from the one thing called hyperbolic discounting. And what this means is that people are usually wired more for instant gratification than long-term satisfaction. So we come out of our time block because we haven't ingrained in our mind enough that what we're doing today will eventually give us what we're ultimately seeking. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to put, joy and happiness and all those things on pause. You need to be experiencing that now. Remember, be, do, have. But oftentimes when a goal is that, so far away, the end of 2016 is so far away, we think that we have all the time in the world, and we don't. So when you feel that urge of, I want to step out of my time block, I don't have time to lead generate, then it's important to bring that all into your awareness. And first you can ask yourself the question of, am I committed to comfort or am I committed to courage? And secondly, ask yourself the question, is this hyperbolic discounting? Now that sounds ridiculous, but when you ask yourself that question, it interrupts the train of thought that was trying to pull you out of your lead generation time block in the first place. So ask yourself, is this hyperbolic discounting? Am I discounting my future for instant gratification? It's just like eating cookies, right? I love this book called The Slight Edge. He talks about it's easy to eat the cookie, it's easy not to eat the cookie. But you eat the cookie, and how well do you feel long term? See, I believe life breaks down into 4 classes of experience, and this is what I'm going to end on. There are 4 classes of experience. A class 1 experience is something that feels good, meaning you enjoy doing it. And it's good for you, and it serves the greater good. That's a class 1 experience. Now, a class 2 experience is something that doesn't feel good. However, it is good for you, and it serves the greater good. Now, for a lot of people, a class 2 experience is like exercise. when you first start exercising, for most people, it doesn't really feel good, but it is good for you. And if you have that energy, you have the energy to go out and serve the greater good. Now, a class 3 experience is something that feels good, meaning you enjoy doing it, but it's not good for you and it doesn't serve the greater good. For me, a class 3 experience is like an Oreo. You know, it feels really good in the moment to eat it, but you know, you eat all that sugar and the carbs and all that stuff, it depletes your energy, and then you don't have the energy to go out and serve the greater good. Now, a class 4 experience is, it doesn't feel good. It's not good for you, and it doesn't serve the greater good. Now, I liken this to people who've been smoking for years and they have emphysema and they still continue to smoke even though they're hacking up a lung. It can't feel good. And it's definitely not good for them, and they can't serve the greater good. But here's the thing. All growth happens by taking class 2 experiences and converting them into class 1 experiences. So if you take exercise, for example, and it's a class 2 experience where you don't really enjoy it, but it's good for you, and after a while, you continue to get yourself to go in and do it. Even when you don't feel like it, you continue to make yourself go in and exercise. Eventually, these little things called results start showing up, and you get excited about it. And after about 6 months, you actually enjoy the process of working out. You look forward to it. You become physically addicted to it, or what Gary would say, you've done it for 66 days to where it becomes a habit. It's a part of you. And now, it's a class 1 experience. What if you did that with lead generation? What if you were to do it long enough to where you really got results with it and you actually enjoyed it? And see, whenever I take on something that I really don't like doing, but I know I have to do it, is I always tie it to a higher meaning. So I always say to myself, you know, if I beat this, if I get through this and I learn this process, who else can I help do the same thing? And as a coach, I don't believe that we should coach people to places that we haven't already been. So how good are you at taking class 2 experiences and moving them into class 1 experiences? And how many things are you doing that are class 3 experiences that you need to stop? And see, the awareness of this can be the thing that triggers the chain reaction for you to go through a change, where you're sitting there and maybe you're grabbing for a food that isn't really good for you and you know it, and you say to yourself, is this a class 3 experience? I mean, I'm going to enjoy this, but is it really good for me? Maybe I need to just eat the celery, which is a class 2 experience, but if I do it long enough, I'll enjoy the celery and I'll live a lot longer and have a lot more energy. So, that's the end, you guys. That's what I have for you today. Now, I told you that I would open this up to any questions, so I'm going to take everyone off of mute. And Joe, I saw your question about the PowerPoint, and I'm totally willing to share it. And I will, this has been recorded, so I will be sending it out to anybody who does want to listen to it. So let me take this off of mute here. Give me just 1 second. Okay, can you still hear me? Is anybody still there?
Hey, Jordan, it's Linda. Thank you. This is awesome.
Oh, sorry. I was just able to hear you. I heard Linda. What did you say?
Hey, this was a great call. Thank you. This was wonderful.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that.
I just sent you an email. I want to take some more detailed notes. This is great stuff.
Good, good.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any, thanks for saying that, Linda, seriously, and I'll look for your email. Does anybody have any specific questions that you want to ask me around what we covered here today?
Jordan, this is Joe. You know, I am getting my team to use Google Calendar, obviously to you know, coordinate our calendars and even the area of seeing who's time blocking and who's not. I mean, would you recommend a team calendar where we can see each other's calendar and how
I think Google works fine for that, Joe. That's how my team does it. It's just you have to invite everybody into the calendar. So we can go through that, but Google works fine for us, especially since Keller Williams, the back office, is now powered through Google. So great question. Anybody else have any other questions?
Hey, Jordan?
Yeah.
Hi, Christina. How are you?
Hey, Christina. I'm good.
Good. Great call. I have a specific question. I'm actually going to jump on the A-Tracker Pro webinar next. Have you had an experience with that, or?
A-Tracker Pro?
Yeah, A-Tracker Pro.
No.
It's on the list of webinars.
Oh, I did see that, Christina, and I do want to look into that. So I don't have any experience with it, but I would love for you to, send me your notes after that call, because I saw that as one of the calls for everyone, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So yeah.
Okay, great.
Thanks for bringing that up. Anybody else?
Jordan, I have a question. Yeah. It's Alina. When you were discussing, dumping your doing a brain dump and then dividing your success list and your to-do list, you mentioned you use some kind of app to keep track of it. Was that Google Docs?
Yeah, I use Google Docs for my team because everything is done in real time. So if I have tasks for them, what I was running into, both as an agent and as a team leader, is I would assign tasks to people, and then I'd forget about them. And I would wonder, okay, and then like a week later I go, oh my God, was that even done? So now what I do is if I have a task for like a specific team member, I put it on that. We have a Google Sheet that we all share. I put it on there, and then I send them an email. And then and then I go back and look at the Google Sheet, and I'm like, oh yeah, I asked her to do this, and it reminds me to bring it up. And I also have that app on my phone. And it's one of the, I have an iPhone, so it's one of the bottom 4, the primary apps that you have when you log onto your phone. So I can pop that open anytime I have an idea or need to do something, and I can put it in there. And then it's also on my computer and my iPad.
Excellent. Okay.
So I really like Google Docs for that. Some people use Evernote, too. It's very popular. I have a coaching client that runs Evernote, like his whole team through Evernote. So that's another one that's really popular.
Excellent. And then you just invite your other team members into this one specific whatever list or okay.
Yep. And it's saved in Google Drive, and they all have access to my Google Drive too. And Google Drive is just like Dropbox.
Okay.
It's the Google version of Dropbox.
All right.
Any other questions? All right, guys, so thank you for listening today. I will get this recording pulled off of GoToMeeting and emailed out. Give me a couple of days, or it may even be next week before I get that done, because I have a lot of family in town. Hope everybody has a great and safe holiday season, and thanks again for listening in. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, Jordan. Merry Christmas.
Okay. That's good. That's excellent.
Perfect timing. Did you pull these up to use them?
I couldn't. I didn't know where to